You open a restaurant because you know how to make a steak, but you've got to feed the masses to eat with the classes, feed the masses to eat with the classes. So you have to give, as a restaurant owner, you have to give the people what they want, not what you want to make.
Sit back and grab a glass. It's Wine Talks with Paul K.
Hey, welcome to Wine Talks with Paul K. And we are in studio today, about to have a great conversation with famed Peter Dills, food critic and wine critic as well. Introductions in just a minute. Great day today here in Southern California. And I want to alert you to a new show that I'm starting. The first episode comes out next week. And that is called Song of America, which is the title of a book written by George Mardikian, famed restaurateur from San Francisco in the 50s. And he brought 250,000 refugees to America, and he wrote a book. It's incredible. I stole the name at the pleasure of his son. So we're going to release stories of immigration to America that are successful, whether it's financial, social, political, or whatever. And the first one's about the Agajanian family and their racing history, including Indianapolis 500 and local racing, but not why we're here.
Well, there's plenty of those guys still around, Agajanians.
Yeah, can you believe that? It's a huge family. Yeah. We talked about that a little bit.
Every time I'll run into somebody, Agajanian. Well, no, that's the third cousin over.
Yeah, right.
We did this, but, yeah.
So welcome to the show, Peter.
Thank you.
He is host of Dining with Dills,
yeah.
Peter Dills, and the podcast Peter Dills, which I'm going to go right into that because, growing up, your dad, Elmer, was one of the famed food critics, not only California, but the country, no?
Yeah, well, I call him the OG of restaurant critics. In the 70s and 80s, when he was doing restaurant critiques, he was the only game in town. There was a woman named Lois Dwan. She wrote for the LA Times, went on to the New York Times, very famous restaurant critic. There was Hilly Rose from KFI in the 70s. But there was KFI 640, Hilly Rose in the 70s, and then Lois Dwan, and then my dad, Elmer Dills. Merrill Schindler came around.
Yeah, Merrill Schindler. They were were they close?
So Merrill and my dad were friends, adversaries at sometimes, but when my dad was on KBC radio, Merrill would come in and be the guest host. So basically when my dad was on vacation, Merrill got his start from
doing that.
From doing that. And you know what Merrill Schindler's claim to fame is? He was the writer for the Casey Kasem Top 40.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Wow, and that was one of my favorite shows with Casey Kasem.
That's what Merrill did back in the 80s and 90s. He was actually a producer of Casey Kasem's Top 40.
So let's play with that a little bit because Jonathan Gold passed away a couple years ago, and he was, well-known LA Times, but mostly digital. Is that part of food culture in America an active part, the critic part? Do we still hang our hat on that? I know you do a lot of it. I just wonder what the popularity, because your dad was so popular and Merrill Schindler was well-known and people sought that opinion, but I'm wondering what the digital world, if some of that's changed at all.
It's a lot. There's probably 1,000 people, 10,000 people out there with a phone and think they can just walk into a restaurant and be a critic just because they have a phone. It's interesting you brought that up. I was talking to a student at Cal State Fullerton this morning at the Titans over there on 57 Freeway, and he's into journalism and wants to learn more. And he brought it up to me, and he said, how do you, as a man my age, how do you relate to people my age? And I said, well, there's a lot of history involved. So at my age, Paul, if I go in and talk about a burrito at a certain restaurant, hopefully I can add a little flavor of the history of a burrito. Where did the burrito come from? What makes a burrito great? Or a steak or a Caesar salad? So to answer your question, the digital age has definitely taken over and there's a lot of competition. But I think for me and people that are, we mentioned Merrill. Merrill's still around. He does a podcast.
Oh, does he? I didn't know.
Yeah. So I think that you just have to, I use the word OG. I think you just have to be that guy that's an expert and not worry that there's 1,000 other kids, with a phone saying, hey, this sucks, or these fries are, whatever.
Do people recognize your name and still say, hey, you related to Elmer?
Yeah. Yeah, I am. When we talked about the radio show KRLA Sundays at 5, they do a whole thing, a 30-second introduction of Peter Dills has taken over for. Well, I don't know if I've taken over for Elmer Dills, but no, I don't go into a restaurant or a scene or some situation and say, "Hey, I'm Peter Dills. You might remember my dad, Elmer Dills."
Yeah.
A lot of people do that. Hey, you might remember his dad, but it's not that I feel uncomfortable with that. I just don't. I don't know if I need to do that. I just keep the energy. I mean, look,
I think you've built your following.
There's you and your dad right there.
1975.
Yeah,
a little while ago. Well, we certainly, as sort of descendants of the industries we're in, can't ignore that.
Right. You can't. It's impossible.
Yeah, and I give a ton of credit to my father for even getting me involved with this. Sometimes,
yeah.
But I consider that legacy an important part of our DNA when it comes to what we do.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes people will say to me, "Boy, your dad must be looking down in heaven and very proud of you." And I'm like, "Well, I hope so." I'm just kind of trying to be me. But I think you brought it up before we even got on. Just trying to make sure that we keep reinventing ourselves and realizing that the podcast and these videos and these cameras are the way of now, not the future. It's the way it is now.
And who knows what the future is going to do?
Yeah.
The reason I sold Wine of the Month Club in March of 2023 was I was not, after 35 years, prepared to regen it because I hadn't, we were paying attention. We were prolific digital marketers, emailers, all that stuff. Yeah. 33 million emails by last year. But something was going on in the industry that I couldn't figure out. It was post-COVID. COVID was incredible, 30% up, do no wrong during COVID. And that eroded very quickly post-COVID. And so I wasn't prepared to regen at that point. And we'd already started the podcast, and I love this stuff as you do.
Yeah.
And so it was time for us to do it. It's time to not slug it out in the trenches anymore. So were you always going to be in the food side of things, following your dad, or not following your dad, but being part of the family?
Well, what happened was, it's kind of a simple story. When I was doing events, always doing things like chili cook-offs, charity events, that was my deal. And then when my dad left KABC Radio in the heyday, or right when they actually left the Dodgers, he went to a station called KRLA, KIEV, which was famous for a guy named George Putnam.
Oh, yeah.
George Putnam.
Sure, yeah. Wow.
Channel 13 News. And there was a guy named Bob Hastings, was the general manager back then. And Bob's dad was in McHale's Navy. He was the one of the...
Come on.
Bob Hastings, his dad was in McHale's Navy, and he was running this KRLA, KIV station. And he said to me, and I was there very part-time, he said, "Hey, your dad's not going to be around forever. Why don't you, instead of Merrill or Steve Knight, why don't you take over the show when your dad goes on vacation? Because your dad sure goes on vacation a lot." So they gave me an 11 o'clock time slot Saturday night, when I don't know if anybody's listening, but that's what they gave me for a couple of weeks, just so I could practice being on the radio.
Yeah, wow, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
How long ago was that?
That's at least 17, 20 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, so I've been doing radio for...
Was it intimidating?
I think it still is. Yeah. I sometimes get nervous, even though I've been doing it for 20 years. Sometimes I'll get nervous, like at 3 o'clock when I'm getting ready for the 5 o'clock show, KRLA. Is anybody listening? Will I get phone calls? And all you can do is just really do the best you can, and people will follow.
Yeah, that's right.
You were just talking about the podcast, my podcast, which is on...
It's on everywhere.
It's on everywhere.
You put Peter Dills, like
Peter Dills. Just type in Peter Dills, subscribe. A friend of mine called me today. He goes, "Hey, I listened to your podcast with Musso and Frank Sunday. I think that was the best show you've done in 3 months." And I thought, really? Because I didn't like it.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I'm glad you said that. I don't like listening to myself necessarily.
No.
And I don't like watching myself necessarily.
Yeah.
But today I did a show Wednesday with Madeline Puckett of Wine Folly. And she's a very engaging, brilliant young lady. So I knew there was no content issues to discuss, nor, pace issues. I knew I could keep the pace up. But I was playing it back today, and I was with one of Bourdain's old producers. He was here helping me with something, and he didn't want me to turn it off. And I thought to myself, this is a really good show. I was engaged to it, and I went through it. And it doesn't always feel that way. You don't always think that. You kind of go, gee, I don't know. That don't sound very good.
I was asking the chef and the general manager questions, and I didn't feel that they were telling a story. I want radio, podcast. We're telling a story.
Yeah.
You can ask me a little later about the wines and things like that. But for me, when I'm selling or talking about a bottle of wine to sell, there has to be a story behind it. In radio too. So, if somebody comes on my show, I want you to tell a story. I don't want to sit there and ask you 15 questions. I want to ask you 2 or 3 questions at the most. And I want you to, because this is why we buy our steaks, because we actually flew out to Chicago and we visited where the, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, right.
I want to hear a story.
Sure. And Musso and Frank's, it's like, what? This is interesting. I'm going to ask you this question because you go to Europe, you go to France, and I have a book at home called The Great Chefs of France. And most of the restaurants in this book, and the book is from the 70s, are still around and they're still legacy restaurants. Food, the culture of food is so much different in Europe than it is in America. In LA, Musso and Frank's is one of the last surviving sort of restaurants like that.
I knew what you were going to ask me. I'd say, he's going to say, why are Dantan's is still around? Why isn't Chasen's still around? Why isn't L'Orangerie still around? Why did all these restaurants go out? Because I think the answer. I think that we are such a casual society in Southern California that I remember going to the Parkway Grill one time after a football game, and I was wearing shorts, and the general manager said, Peter, hey, come on, what are you doing? I go, well, I just got through the football game. Now, if you walked in with shorts, maybe not a tank top, if you walked in, they just want your business.
Yeah, right. No, it's different. It's totally different.
Why did all those great restaurants from the 70s and the 80s go out of business when in Europe they're still there?
I think it's a cultural shift in food. I think, profitability, there's no legacies to hand off, Ferdinand Point and, his wife, whatever, and they hand it off to their kids, or the Trois Gros brothers. I think maybe the respect for cuisine, particularly regional cuisine, is just got history in Europe that we don't have here, and maybe that'll change. But we were responsible for those restaurants you just mentioned for some of the big shifts in food in America.
Was it called? I remember Merrill Schindler wrote for the Zagat Guide. He was one of the editors, and he had called that the Parkway Grill was the Spago of the East. Spago. I remember that line in the Zagat Guide, the Spago of the East. But maybe we just never had enough, or don't have enough interest in those type of fine dining places anymore.
Well, but that's interesting though. Look, the Smith brothers, look what they've been through. For the listeners, the Smith brothers are local restaurateurs who have 3, at least stalwart restaurants in Southern California, but have had many more than that didn't survive.
Yeah, that didn't do it. Yeah.
I mean, even a guy like you who's been to all these places, critiqued all these restaurants, talked to all the owners, probably can't put a finger on why some survive and some don't.
I was talking to a restaurateur just a couple of weeks ago, and I just crossed my fingers that he survives. It's a barbecue restaurant. And I was asking him, I go, hey, I'm going to write an article. I write for the Sierra Madre newspaper.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, there's no cost or anything. We don't charge you. It's a real restaurant review. Tell me what your favorite dishes are, your signature dishes. And he said, I like all my dishes. I go, I know that, but give me 2 or 3 dishes to try. He goes, well, I can't really do that because I like everything on my menu. I go, well, look, you have children, and obviously you like all your children, but which dishes, which is your favorite? And he wouldn't give me an answer. And so to answer your question is that I think that if you own a restaurant and do it your way, that is fine. You want to, you open a restaurant because you know how to make a steak, but you've got to feed the masses to eat with the classes, feed the masses to eat with the classes. So you have to give, as a restaurant owner, you have to give the people what they want, not what you want to make. It's not like, that soup Nazi thing. Hey, here's my soup. This is the way it is. I remember going out with my dad to a restaurant. It was in Glendale. I don't remember on brand. And my dad said, okay, make sure you get, plenty of garlic.
Really?
Plenty of garlic. So the guy comes back and my dad says, I said plenty of garlic. Guy comes back, a little bit of garlic more. He goes, sir, I want my eyes to, not like onions, but I want to cry that there's so much garlic. I want my wife to be mad at me when I get home because there's so much garlic. So I think that the problem with what I see with the restaurants is they try to appease themselves and they really are in the customer service business.
It's hospitality.
It's a hospitality business. Bruce Taylor up in La Cañada has two restaurants, one on 8th Street and the other one on Foothill. And he always says to me, I get together with him 2 or 3 times a year, and he always says, Peter, I don't think we have the best steak in town, but I think it's pretty dang good and it's pretty reasonably priced. So I think that when a restaurant gets that balance.
This is Taylor Steakhouse.
Taylor's
in La
Steakhouse.
Cañada.
But I think the same thing for wine. There has to be a balance of the cost of the wine or the cost of what you're giving somebody. Because if you're giving somebody an $85 steak and it's okay.
Do you think, let's move into that, because there was a restaurant in Hermosa and we spent a lot of time there. And there's a guy down there, his name is Slay, is a chef. His restaurants, he keeps opening them. While restaurant next door is closing, he is opening more, and he has a separate cuisine for each one, and each one has hospitality-driven, energy. But there was a restaurant in Hermosa. I forgot the name of it now, and it said on the menu, "Substitutions and changes politely declined."
Mm-hmm.
Now, that is a pretty arrogant position to take when you're supposed to be in the hospitality business and taking care of your clients, and you go, no extra garlic allowed.
Yeah.
Right.
We're going to serve it the way we're going to serve it. It's going to be rare, and that's the way it is, and that's the way we serve it.
So this is an interesting segue into the wine side, because it's a very important subject. And years ago, I read an article about a guy saying, well, the wine trade, they don't understand. You've got to meet the customer where the customer wants you to meet. And I think in general, that's probably true. You vint wines, what are popular at the time. We had Bartles and James at one time. We had all this stuff that used to come out, and there's different things today. But isn't a true glass of wine exactly the opposite of that? Is what is given to you by the vineyard and by the vines and by the grapes, and you make the best you can from there, as opposed to stocking the shelves with Josh and Apothic Red, and they're trying every year to make sure it tastes the same so the client comes back. And so this is a big argument that goes on, and I'm very romantic about it, but I get it.
I don't want to step into your knowledge because what
well, it's very kind of you to say thank you.
Well, no, but I have had this discussion with the wine buyers at Vaughn's and Pavilions, and Albertson, Safeway. I said, look, if you're just going to pull the stuff off the shelf that you feel is not selling, now it could be selling in Monrovia, but it's not selling in Fullerton.
Yeah.
And you're doing a schematic of, hey, well, we're only selling 10 cases of whatever, and you pull it on the shelf. Well, we're just going to become Stater Brothers.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with Stater Brothers.
No, you're talking about the wine selection.
I'm just saying
department.
selection.
Right. Yeah.
So we're going to get to a point where we're just taking wines off the shelf because only 2 people, and all you need is 2 people to come into a supermarket and keep buying a certain wine.
That's right. You need that regular.
Yeah, you just need that regular person to buy St. Francis Cabernet twice a week, and you're good. You're golden. But yeah, it's not selling in Fullerton, so we're going to take it off the shelf.
Are they central buyers? Or can you buy in your individual shop as what you?
So that's kind of what I wanted to lead the show off with, is that when I got into this business 5 years ago, I thought somebody would come in and say, we want a case, not a bottle. We want a case of something fancy that's hard to get. Tell me something that
Louis Jadot, Mouton.
Yeah.
What the
I can get it for you. I thought that's what business I was getting into.
Yeah.
I thought I was getting into the I can get it for you business, but I'm not. I can get you some Chateau Montelena Cabernet or Chardonnay.
Yeah.
I can get that for you. But the hard to find stuff like the Georges Latour of what
BV.
Yeah, BV. $139 a bottle or whatever it is, $135 a bottle. Oh, but we want the 2011. Yeah, everybody wants the 2011. We can't get that. At least in our realm of responsibility of getting wines for customers.
So you went into this job thinking that you're going to be sort of the concierge of wine for that shop, and it ended up being what?
It's just the same thing that everybody else gets. Sure, Dow will invite you up to their winery to take a tour of it.
Yeah, right.
But to me, that's fine. I mean, I can drink Tanger at home.
Yeah,
whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, you like I said, I mean, you tried over all these wines, and you're the host. I'm asking you one question, but would people come in and say, "Hey, Paul, I'm looking for a case of Chateau Montelena, but it has to be 2007."
Well, because the nature of my customer base was not like that, though I did, and as every subscription club in America has tried, provide a service to people to call in and say, "Can you get me this? Can you get me that?" Now, and I know that most domestic wines are very hard to, I mean, the regular stuff that you have on the shelf you can find, but so many domestic wines are DBAs of DBAs of DBAs. So just to give me a brand name is almost impossible sometimes to find them. Europe's different because they have an import statement, but no, I didn't do a lot of it. And oftentimes what they wanted, I couldn't find. It was too hard to find. So it's just an interesting irony between your job out there is to answer the questions if they have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So how many people walk into the shop knowing what they want to buy? Percentage.
Can I include liquor as well, liquor and wine?
Why not?
So a lot of these antique collections, what are they called? Antique. So they're looking for these special bourbons, and yeah, I can get them. It's going to be a little bit of work, but I'm not just going to get them from somebody just walking into the shop. They've got to be a regular customer if I'm going to go do that, because then we just call them cherry pickers.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
they just had right.
Yeah, they just happened to call in 10 different stores to see if they had a certain antique.
And you want to cater to your regular buying client.
Somebody that's going to spend,
which is important.
Yeah, somebody that's going to spend $2,000 or $3,000, $4,000 or $5,000. And there are people like that. I mean, there are people that are going to spend a lot of money on wine. I mean, but once their wine cabinets are filled, you might not see them for 6 months.
Do you think that the apps, the Vivinos and the Wine Searcher apps have created sort of, I guess it's bargain hunting from people?
Again, you probably know the answer better than me, but what I learned is that somebody will come in and say, "Peter, why is the Johnny Walker Blue $179? I can get it at Costco for $166. Well, then go right ahead and go down to Costco and get it for $166. Oh,
that's a good answer.
But they're out of it right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, so they're out of it for $166, and I'm charging you $177. I have it. They don't.
$11.
Yeah, $11.
That's 50 cents a shot.
Yeah. So that's kind of, and then the apps, I can get it through an app. And then I looked at the apps and I'm like, well, wait a minute, this company is out of Kentucky. And I know, and you know that you call that wine app. We don't have that, but I have this.
Yeah.
That's what even my customers admitted to me, that when they try to go on these wine apps and call them, yeah, we have Artemis 2007. And then when you say, okay, I'll take a case of Artemis 2007. Well, we don't have 2007. We've got 2017.
That's a
bait and switch, or not?
Yeah, no, that's what it is. That's really what it is. And those apps, well, people would come to the shop and they would just point the gun at, point their phone, and they're very inaccurate. Vivino's probably the most inaccurate of all of them because they have an average price, and there's people out there that are baiting people into the store with with that bait and switch price, lost leader that they don't have, just like a car salesman, and then they move you to a different part of the store. But it's such a competitive world right now that we have to be cognizant of these apps, but we can't compete with them because you have to hold your ground at what your margins are and what you're trying to do.
And is it really available? Like you said, Which about the car? Car is a great analogy. So you mean that they have a Porsche at Resnick for 50,000? Yeah. So I drive over to Resnick. Oh, we don't have any $50,000 Porsches.
Yeah.
But we got $150,000 Porsche.
Right. We'll just add $100,000 to it.
Yeah. What happened to the 50,000? Oh, we sold all those.
Yeah, we sold them all. Yeah,
we sold those two. They're gone.
Have you seen? It's been 5 years you've been on the floor. Have you seen a change in consumerism?
Well, I know that with I started the month of COVID, and
the beginning of COVID.
Beginning of COVID, and we were selling a ton of high-end stuff: Moet Chandon, Hennessy. People, because obviously they weren't going out to eat because they had to stay home, and they were buying anything that was luxury. They were buying.
Yeah. And that changed.
And that changed dramatically. I know at my store, I was just in the cellar, and there are 8, I'm not exaggerating, 8 cases of Insignia. 8 cases of Insignia, 2018, $330. Well, Paul, a year and a half ago, that was $200.
Yeah, right.
$220.
Yeah.
So they've raised the price, and it's not selling. It's sitting there.
Yeah.
Yeah, 5 years ago, it probably would have sold at $300 because people needed it. But it's, I guess it's supply and demand.
Well, when the going concern, when the Wine Monthly was running and just cruising along, I would never hear from Silver Oak. I would never hear from Caymus.
Yeah.
None of the big brands would come here. They didn't need me.
Yeah.
And they're courting restaurants because that's the house pour is where the money is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then COVID hits and they're banging on the door. And I said, I'll buy some stuff and I'm sure I can sell it, but you can't forget me after this is over. Well, I wish they had forgotten me after it was over but the point I was going to make was I was getting 1 liters of Caymus and I was selling them for $140. They're now $99. And back then you couldn't even get liters retail. Now you can. The market's changed so much. And to go back to your point about COVID, whatever I said to the client, they'd buy. If I put out anything, and you're right, the prices, what they were willing to pay went up a lot. I'm sitting on 9 cases of Caymus 1 liters right now because the moment it was over, the day of, those sales stopped. So the customers went back to the restaurants. They went back to buying their regular method, but they had no interest anymore in the elevation of their palates. It was really, I thought, quite interesting. And I wonder that parallels the food world as you've been out on the streets tasting food and eating and courting restaurants. What have you seen when it comes to pricing? Has it been busier for these guys these days? What's happening? They rebounded?
I didn't realize this, but when I was talking to the guys from Musso and Frank's, they said that even buying meat, steaks, beef is cyclical. I waited a second to find out what they were talking about. They said, well, January, February, we're paying more for the steaks, but then come April, May, prices start to level off and go down. And I thought, well, I didn't realize that prices would ever go down on anything.
That. Yeah.
I mean, I realized that salmon would be seasonal because they're river, they're up in the river in Washington, so maybe or king crab legs or seafood. I get that, but I didn't realize that meat was so cyclical because I'm thinking there's slaughter seasons. I don't know, but
it's gone through the roof though.
Yeah, the even at I know at Pavilions a $15 steak from 2 months ago is now $22, and ground beef, and if you see ground beef for $1.97, they're probably losing money.
Ugh.
But supermarkets and restaurants are 2 different dynamics. The supermarkets advertise, their whole push is they don't want you to go to a restaurant. I mean, if you grab your flyer in the mail on Wednesdays, it often says supermarket quality, restaurant quality,
right.
Supermarket prices.
Right. Yes.
I
don't know what that means.
It means stay home. You don't need to go out. But they're in competition.
I mean, they talk about. I just read this actually recently. They talk about sushi grade fish. There's no definition for sushi grade fish. It's just, I don't know what they're trying to tell you it is, but it doesn't exist. I
didn't know that. Well, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. A and B and C. I don't know.
One day I just wrote this note down. We were talking about prices of wine. remember Kane Cellars, Kane 5.
They burned down in a fire.
Yeah. So,
or are they reopened? I don't know.
No, I haven't seen the wine lately at all, and I don't remember what happened to the brand. But I'm talking about the late '80s, early '90s when I went into the Vons over here at the time at Arcadia, and the Kane 5, which was their premium brand, like insignia for that winery, was $2.99.
Wow,
$2.
When?
Oh, this is probably like 1990.
Ooh,
it was $2.99, and I
wait a minute, what?
Yeah,
$2.99.
Yeah. So I went outside, and the guy's name was Kelly Stockton, and the wholesale house was called Vintage something. I can't remember now. They're gone. I had to go outside on my cell phone, which was back then was that big brick that was in your car, and call him and say, "Hey, Kelly," I said, "is Kane 5 still like $95 a bottle wholesale?" And he goes, "Yeah." I go, "Thank you very much." I went there and I grabbed every bottle I could. I brought it to the thing, and the guy's checking me out, and he's like, "This is a pretty good deal, huh?" I go, "Yeah." I'm not going to tell him.
No.
I go, "Do you have any more in the back?" He goes, "I don't know. I'll check." And he went in the back, and there's nothing more. So I got it all. And I called my dad. I go, "Dad, you won't believe this. I just got Kane 5 for $2.99. Maybe it was $3.99. He goes,
Jesus.
He goes, "What are you doing buying wine at a market?" He goes, "You have a warehouse full." I go, "I don't care."
$3.99.
And so let me tell you a funny story. That was at least 2000. It couldn't have been much past that. I went to a tasting at Beverly Hills recently, and I was walking around. And I ran into this old acquaintance, not old person, but just an old acquaintance of the trade. And I told her this story, and she goes, "That was me." She goes, "I'm the one that marked it down. We were redoing the whole cellar, and I had to get rid of everything, and I'm the one that made that $3.99. I go, "I love you."
Yeah.
So
that's insane.
And have you ever returned sent a wine back at a restaurant?
Yeah, that's a great question. It sounds like something that was like set up, because I do have a story. So down in Newport Beach, there's a place called Pelican Hills Resort.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I know it.
Overlooking a bridge, beautiful 5 o'clock sunset, the whole deal. And I was being hosted by a vendor, not a wine vendor, somebody that I helped get their almonds and cashews into pavilions. And as a thank you, they took me, "Where do you want to go?" They were based in Newport Beach. So we went to Pelican Hills. I ordered a glass of Tattinger. And this is 7-8 years ago.
Really?
And back then it was $28 a glass.
Wow.
She brought it over, and I looked at it, and I did my Elmer Dills thing. I got the knife out and I did this. There's no bubbles at all. And she just rolled her eyes at me, and I go, "It's flat." And so she comes back.
Oh my goodness.
Well, she comes back, opened a new bottle, and said, and she had the biggest smile on her face and said, "Oh, I can see the difference."
Well, you taught her something.
I mean,
how about that?
Yeah. She goes, "I can see the difference." I go, "Yeah." So one thing I talk about on my radio show, Paul, is that, and I do this every time, I tell them, open a fresh bottle. Yeah. And I have never had one person at a restaurant say, "No, we have to give you what we have opened already."
I agree with that.
They have never, ever, any restaurant has ever said to me, "No."
So you lead with that. Or do you wait till
if it's champagne, I certainly do. If it's cake bread, Chardonnay, then I'm going to trust that it's selling pretty fast.
So Sandra and I were up in Monterey years ago, 2014. It was the Concord Elegance. I forgot why we went there, but anyway, we were sitting in a bar. I'm having a martini, and the house pour was from Classic. It was the Crane Lake.
Oh.
Crap.
Okay.
And,
right. I know
and
what
this
is
is back when Crane Lake was actually vintage wine. It wasn't
okay.
just
well, then maybe it was
blended.
okay.
So it's apparently the bar back thought this was a good idea to put in big giant black felt pin letters, numbers, put the date that they opened the bottle.
I've seen them, especially at Japanese restaurants. Yeah.
Okay,
I've seen
fine.
that.
Put it nicely discreetly on the back, not this big giant thing on the label.
Right.
And so the one I was looking at the Pinot Noir, and it was at least 10 days, maybe 2 weeks old. It's been sitting there. It's gone, right? So the waitress came. I was next to the waitress station. She came up. She says, "Glass of Pinot Noir." The guy didn't even look. So, why did you put the date on if you're not going to look at it? Just pour it. And he poured it right in front of me. I said, "Dude," I go, "that's coming back." He goes, "What do you mean, sir?" I said, "Look at the date of the bottle." He goes, "Oh, wow, man. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate that."
Yeah.
Because they may not come back, but if it doesn't come back, then that person's got a bad experience. They may never come back to the restaurant because the wine's so bad. But I did it just 2 nights ago at Parkway Grill.
Send it back.
Yeah.
And why?
He poured 2 healthy Bordeaux, the house Bordeaux, which is called Routé or Roulet, and it was corked. And whoever drunk it before me either sent it back or had a bad experience with it because it wasn't, when corked wine, A, is musty, and 2, there's no fruit. It's all gone. And he kind of rolled his eyes. You probably know Naz.
I know Naz. I've known Naz for 35 years.
Yeah.
I like Naz.
I love Naz. And so he looked at me and I go, "Smell the difference." He goes, "Oh, yeah, I get it, But nobody had sent it back before that. So, and it was very, very nice.
Well, I wonder how many people actually know enough to send something back. I mean, probably with sparkling wine or champagne, it's a little easier, for me at least, to tell. Sure. But somebody with your palate would know like right away that not only it's just funky.
Well, but that's funny because my wife is way more sensitive than I am. And so she's the one who said, "Did you get that nose?" And I said, and she by no means has followed the career here. She was the accountant here. She did not care about the rest of it. I go, "Yeah, I smelled it, but I was hoping it would blow off and just kind of keep going."
Blow off.
But then when the fruit was gone, I realized there was a problem with the wine. But I wonder how many people are intimidated, to do that. Just because you expect that a house pour or even by the glass is a curated wine, right? One that there was a deliberate reason we put it on the list.
Yeah, to make sure that it sells fast enough by the glass.
Right.
And I'm sure the person that's going in there selling Parkway or what name any restaurant would say, "Hey, put this by the glass. It will sell." God, I shouldn't say this, but I'll say this anyway. I had a vendor come in. Maybe I shouldn't say this. Okay. I won't say the name of the vendor. And he goes, "Peter, I need a side stack. I need a side stack. I need a side stack." So that would be about 3 cases of wine. And he has a sleeve that he'll put the wine in.
Yeah.
And I like the guy. And I said, "Look, I'll put a side stack there. But if in 3 weeks, whatever's left, you're going to have to come in, or your boss is going to have to come in and buy what's left." And he thought about it. And it's probably not right.
So funny.
Not right for me to say, but.
No, but you know what? I'm glad you brought that up for the listeners. The liquor business and the wine business it's no longer run by the mob.
I was going to use the word.
Yeah.
It's
no longer run by the mob, but
yeah,
certainly the influence of it and the business style has a lot of gleanings from those days. And I can't tell you how many times it probably happened to you 1,000 times. On the 30th of the month or the 31st, that rep comes in and says, "I need some help.
Yeah.
I need you to make my number for me.
Mm-hmm.
I need a side stack."
Yeah.
And you expect the favor in return one day.
Yeah.
Like in my case, I bought, I don't know what some strawberry flavored something or another, and a bunch of little pieces, bottles here and there, something. But I expected access to Pappy Van Winkle after that from the same vendor.
And
I got it because, that in this business, it's one hand washes the other in this career, and it's a controlled industry, and we deal with the best we can in that regard.
I was working at a restaurant in Pasadena, very part-time, Robin's Wood Fire Barbecue.
Oh, I remember that.
395 North Rosemead. I was not the manager, but I was the night manager. So basically, put the money away, take the till, put it in the, managing at night, but I wasn't in charge.
Right.
And the guy from Harold Lambos came in, Fred. His name was Fred. He called him Fast Freddy.
Harold Lambos was a beer distributor, right? Generally.
And he said to me, "Peter, we're pushing Moosehead beer. And if I can get 25 taps in the San Gabriel Valley, they're going to send me to Hawaii." I said, "Absolutely." I didn't ask him for anything in return. I said, "Absolutely, bring it in." 1 keg? He goes, 1 keg. And I go, "Yeah, bring it in. We'll go through it."
Yeah.
So what? I mean, we're in a relationship business.
That's right. But I think it's more than others because of the control of the liquor and the the lucrativity, even a word, of particularly liquor. But that's an interesting point. I think I have 2 or 3 espresso machines. And my wife was going through her jewelry the other day, and she goes, "What's this?" And it was this 5 troy ounces of silver, 0.999 from the U.S. Assay Office. I go, "Oh my God!" A vendor gave that to me. I said, "I haven't seen this thing probably for 25 years." And I can't remember who it was.
Right.
Gave it to me. Says, "Hey, if you do me a favor, I'm going to give you this thing. I got it as an award.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give it to you." I'm like, "Cool. The thing's worth like $500."
Yeah.
But you said something I wanted to talk about. Oh yeah. The one hand washes the other industry is such an important part of what we do. And I can tell you that when this one woman retired from RNDC, it had a major impact on stuff for me. I mean, it's almost like I should retire at the same time, which is what I did serendipitously. But that relationship was so deep, and I had helped her career so much along the way, and she had helped my company along the way, that it was a true parting of friends. You know, I haven't seen her since, but it was a true parting of friends that did business together for a long time. And that's a valuable lesson here.
Yeah. Really, those type of things. For you were running the show. For me, we have district managers and regional managers and buyers and people like that who we have to lean on at our level to see if we can get that Pappy Van Winkle, which I couldn't even bother with because it's so hard to get.
So, but I also have, I don't know, I probably still have 10 cases of Eagle Rare that I had to get some of the Pappy I got.
But that sold for a while.
Yes. Yeah. And
it's slowed down.
And then with Blanton's, that was dime a dozen. You could get it anytime you wanted until it went to Harbor.
Harbor. Yeah.
Sazerac has it, and they went to Harbor, and now it's allocated.
Yeah.
And I had six packs of it left over from RNDC, and I was selling it to restaurants for considerably more than I paid for it.
Yeah.
I'm down to now a bottle, but
yeah,
that was like contrived allocation.
Yeah.
You could get it anytime you wanted to at some point.
Well, that's like the insignia, Joseph Phelps, and that's what I was thinking. I'm like, what are we going to do with these 8 cases of insignia at $330 a bottle?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just sitting there. I mean,
that seems awfully high.
Well, okay. So here's my thought is that the supermarket business, name a supermarket, Ralph's, Kroger, Albertsons, Stater Brothers, they're working on pennies. They really are. They're working on pennies.
That's an important comment to make.
And if you're sitting on inventory that's just one store. They're sitting on all that inventory. And then when the quarterly profits come in, I think about this, maybe I think too much, but they've got to do quarterly profits to their shareholders and say, hey, look, we lost this or we made this. Wouldn't it make sense for them, the Krogers of the world, to pull back on their buying when they know that the quarterly results are coming in? Say, hey, Paul, we love you, but we're not going to buy any Josh right now.
Yeah.
Or let's something more expensive. We're not going to buy any of your BV or Insignia right now until the quarter's over, and then we can buy it again. It's the same thing in my business, in your business. I'm always looking for sponsors for the show, for the radio show.
Right.
And I had a conversation today with somebody, and he goes, "Oh, Peter, perfect timing. My budgets are coming back for the year. The year." Do you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah,
like,
I get it.
Why are you buying so much stuff?
Why are you stocking those shelves when it's just general management?
Yeah, it's just, and I had a friend that he's still a friend. The second busiest store in Pavilions is in Newport Coast.
Oh, I know that story. Yeah.
Yeah, Kobe used to shop there and everything. And he would tell me that, he goes, we just got a lot of $300, $400 wine that's not selling. Might be just like you said about the cane, $2.99.
Yeah.
He goes, we should just start all over and get rid of the stuff that's not selling. It's boutique or what. It's great to say that you have all these great wines, but if they're not selling, it's inventory.
That's the bottom line. This is the part of the wine business that it's not frustrating because it's always been driven by the consumer. You always have to have stuff that the people want. But then there's this wonderful romantic side of wine where this value, what's in the glass is such value to the human soul that you can have a drink and you can feel something from it. And so these are two opposing things, because those are the wines that are made like that, but not everybody can afford them. Nobody cares what's in the glass. They want a glass of wine, and that's what you get. And it led me to this point that you jogged a memory with, which is, guy goes, I'm going to go to Hawaii. I'm going to go to Italy if you buy these 10 cases. I get to go to, I'll give you the espresso machine I win after I get back from Italy. All this stuff that I got.
Right.
I mean, I got that all the time. This poor guy I had sitting in where you're sitting now, wonderful couple, make gorgeous wines out of Paso, just started and passionately approaching the wine trade. I'm going to be part of this lifestyle, They can't afford to send salespeople to Hawaii. They can't walk into a sales meeting at Southern and go, hey, you guys, 200 reps, we're going to, if you sell the, they can't do that. And so I don't know that necessarily limits the placements that they get, like at pavilions or farms or something.
It does.
How about the number of vendors that you're allowed to work with? Like, because certainly the more POs that you generate as the buyer, the harder it is for corporate to deal with, right? They got to write that many more checks and have that many more accounts.
I remember there's a woman, a young lady that came in and she had 2 SKUs. A SKU is a product, and it's called Nosotros Tequila. She had an Añejo and a Blanco. She only had 2.
Nosotros.
What?
Nosotros is R, isn't it?
Yeah. We are. And I wanted to help her. You know how sometimes you just want to help people?
Yeah.
People come in your shop, and sometimes you go, no, enough today. And then sometimes you think, I want to help this person.
Yes.
Because they don't know.
Yes.
They don't know what they're doing.
Right.
And she goes, what do I do? She goes, I have only 2 SKUs. I have to go to all these Ralphs and Vons and Pavilions, but I only have 2 tequilas. I go, well, come up with a necktie that you can put around the bottle and whatever, 100% agave or award-winning or whatever it is. And she did it. She actually did it. And to this day, I don't know if she's still working for the tequila company, but it's still on the shelf today. And that's my segue, is that just because you got your wine on the shelf doesn't mean nothing.
No.
Doesn't mean anything. Is it going to stay on the shelf? That's the whole thing. And then to your point of, well, I have this wonderful South African wine that we've been able to get into a couple places, but we can't get it into Pavilions or Vons or Ralph's or whatever it is, because you don't have somebody to come in and sell it to pitch.
The rule of thumb I heard from 2 young men, one of them was descendant of the Trinqueros, which is Sutter Home, and the other was descendant of one of the winemakers at Camus, and they were teamed up and they were making wine at Trinquero. I forgot the name of the brand now. And they said, we have to have 100 placements on our own as a supplier. For the listeners, supplier is the person that basically makes the wine and brings it in to overseas. The distributor is the person that takes that wine and sells it to the retailer restaurants, and then you buy it. So he said, we have to have 100 bona fide placements of this wine before any distributor picks it up. And that's going back to your point, which is it's going to stay on the shelf unless somebody does what they're doing, going out and schlepping the wines, doing the dinners, pouring them off where they're going to pour it off. And I thought that, I think branding in wine and liquor is probably one of the hardest products in the world to brand, next to toothpaste and salad dressing. You're not going to unseat Paul Newman, and you're not going to unseat, George Clooney's thing. But then they see things like Dow selling for $1 billion, Clooney making $1 billion or $2 billion, and there's an intrigue to like getting into this and see if you can make it work. And the reason I brought that up is sitting where you're sitting, I've had a half a dozen at least pretty average ideas that people spent a lot of money on trying to get their brand going. One was somebody thought that she was the first person with a 375, and she called it.
What do you mean I know what a 375 is.
Yeah,
but
she thought that selling wine in a 375 was this revolutionary idea, and it was quality wines. It was not
Oh.
sorry, they weren't quality. And second, it's just marketing. And the point I'm getting at is the intrigue of this industry is, in these cases, the dollars. Like I can start at $3.75. I can start a can. There was another girl who insisted that Lafitte Rothschild would be in a can one day. And she sat where you're sitting. I'm like, are you nuts? That's never going to happen. There was another brand that came through here that was, biodynamic organic wines. Oh, there was one that I tasted recently. Listen to this. Method Champenois in a can. Now figure that out. How do you disgorge? And you didn't. All the lees were in that can. So that's the irony of this industry, is that you get these people that have these grand ideas and they invest a lot of money in you can't, there's nothing to reinvent. There's really nothing to reinvent.
Somebody asked me this morning, they have a major call with one of the biggest buyers in Southwest. They're looking for non-alcoholic wines, which is what, 0.05, I guess, 0.05. And the buyer feels that the non-alcoholic or low calorie, they already have them on the shelves.
Yeah.
And he asked me he goes, do people come in? I go, no, they do for whatever, maybe dry January, but I don't see, and I could be wrong. I've been wrong many times.
Do you have a shelf? Do you have a section?
Yes.
And
yeah, but I don't see that expanding.
How many are on that?
Oh, I'd say at least 18 or 20. But keep in mind that Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, Merlot, Cabernet, but he asked me, and he's with a pretty reputable company. And he goes, Peter, do you see a focus, or do you see any emerging market for this? I go, it's already here. It's not going to get much bigger. That's just my opinion.
I think that's accurate. I've seen, first of all, they're unpalatable.
And it doesn't taste good. It just doesn't taste good. I'm sorry. Beer, Heineken and Beck's, low calorie, tastes fine. It's fine. It's good. You have a hamburger and a non-alcoholic Heineken, it's fine.
Yeah.
But 0.05 alcohol, they call it alcohol removed.
Yeah. So I was at Whole Foods not that long ago, and they were pouring the non-alc Corona.
Yeah.
But they still had the stanchions up, and it had a sign saying you must be 21.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
I know.
I know.
It's non-alc. What do you?
I know.
What's the point? It's just beverage, but most of them are unpalatable. And I don't know if you know the process for wine, but if let's say a wine's 13.5% alcohol, first of all, you have to start with good wine. You can't start with crap like they used to do with the barrel aged stuff, bourbon barrel stuff. You take out that 14% alcohol, but you're also taking out another 16 to 18% of flavor. So you really lose 30-something% of the total volume. Well, you can't, there's not enough margin in wine to lose 30% of the margin once you've paid for picking it and fermenting it. So you add back water and some flavoring agents. That's why it tastes like crap. You've taken all the flavor out of it, and you're going to add back what flavor to it. So I've never had one that I would sit and drink a glass of. And I think you're totally right. I think it's one of the blips in our industry that just kind of is going to pass through. Do you carry Ariel, A-R-I-E-L? I mean, that's been around for 25 years.
Yeah, I was going to say that's one of the first ones. That was one of the only ones when it was on the shelf. It was at the bottom, and somebody would come in and say, do you have any non-alcoholic wine? And I got the Ariel there.
But it's not, I tasted not long ago. It tastes the same as the other ones. And I think it's Rodney Strong, right? It's one of those big brands. And I called them. I wanted to ask. I said, I used to stock this on my dad's shelf, almost my dad's shelf later in the career. And have you seen any change in sales? He goes, nah. Because it's only about 3% of our total gross sales, and it's not changed. And I don't see the hullabaloo. I don't see the reason for it. Same with biodynamic wines. You have an organic section?
So people will come in and ask about that. There's one called Bontero.
Yeah.
I think I did a call with Dow, and they're 2 or 3 years away from being certified.
Yeah, organic, biodynamic, whatever they're doing.
Yeah, whatever. but very rare. As many people that ask for non-alcoholic wines will ask for organic. I don't even know what it means. I just tell them to go. I never do this, but when they ask, I say, go to Whole Foods. They might have something there for you, because I don't really know what it is. Because if it's organic, the ground has to be taken out. The pesticides have to be
3 years. Yeah.
3 years, and then the leaves and the vines, and so I don't really get it. And then they come up with, well, if it's not organic, I get a headache and the sulfates. I'm like, no, that's not what it's from.
Yeah, it's funny. Most European wineries that are family owned and not big corporate America, corporate Europe, would say we want as little as possible anyway, because my kids are playing in the vineyard. We don't go out to spray our fields because we want to spray them. We spray them to protect them.
Yeah.
If there's going to be a problem, whatever the reasons are, but we try to keep it minimally anyway. And so, I opened a bottle of organic Sangiovese the other day from Sardinia or one of those places, and it had totally failed on me. It shouldn't have failed. A regular wine in that same genre would have been fine, but it didn't last. And I think that's one of the problems with organic wines in general. But I had a woman in the club. I had an organic club. It was not very popular. And I sent the wine out. It did not have the little green leaf on the back.
Oh, yeah. Well, that means...
It's Demeter or whatever the thing.
I don't know.
But
that
that certifies it.
Okay.
And I said, she goes, it's not organic. I said, yes, it is, ma'am. She goes, no, it's not. It doesn't have the green leaf. I said, well, these people have been farming organically long before the green leaf even existed.
Right.
She goes, I don't care. I want a green leaf. So I had to send her to replace the bottle with a green leaf. So it had nothing to do with being organic. It was strictly the way it was labeled.
That's, I'm going to guess and say that type of buyer just wants it to be the way it is, and they're not going to fuss about maybe the taste, or maybe hopefully they'll drink it and go, oh, this tastes like crap. Forget that. I'm just going to drink what I like.
Right. That's what it is.
Coming in and, buying, do you have a organic Chardonnay? I'm like, wow. I mean, no, I don't, we have unoaked, we have Tolosa, we've got blah, 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 blah. But, you're getting too specific. And I'm not even sure, and you would know better, I'm not sure that a liquor store or a wine shop is going to be able to help you.
I think what you see in what you're doing at that store, you're seeing a pretty good indication of the American palate at a supermarket and what they're really buying. Leaving non-alc, low-alc wines to the people that specialize in it and know who's buying it is the right idea. Same with premium spirits. There's places where you can get those if you want those. You want biodynamic wines. And my first experience with biodynamic wines, we were in New York. My daughter Lisa, she's a French trained boulanger, and she's into the food scene. She goes, Dad, we have to go to Brooklyn and go to this natural wine shop. I'm like, and this is early on in this stupid.
So it was all 100% natural wine?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we went to this little shop, and and she goes, oh, let's get that Sicilian Nero d'Avola. I said, okay. I didn't even look at the price like an idiot. I grabbed the bottle, I put it up, and there was $75. I'm like, me? I was paying $3, for wine here. I'm going to pay $75. So I bought it. We took it back to the hotel, and it was unpalatable.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at my dad. I said, look, wine is not to suffer through because you think it's a healthy beverage because it's organic.
Right.
That's not what it's about. So drop the consideration of that and pick the wines that make you feel good.
Yeah.
And don't drink a wine that doesn't taste good just because it's organic.
Right. What are the laws in New York about bringing wine back? I mean,
it's shipping it?
No. So
taking it back?
Yeah.
I don't think you can.
Yeah, okay. So that's the way California is. Yeah, okay.
You can't bring a bottle back?
No, not unless it's corked. That's kind of on the sly. I'll tell some good customers, look, if I'm not here and you didn't like it, don't tell them you didn't like it. Tell them that it was spoiled. I
did not know that.
Yeah. If you tell them, I didn't like this, well, that's all. We can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Hey, I had a funny smell. I don't think it's you know, I'm not going to taste it to
Yeah.
second guess them.
Yeah.
So
No, of course not.
Yeah. So you can't, in California, you buy it, it's yours.
It's funny. Naz put those 2 glasses up by the cash register by the bar for the manager to come and smell them. And she came over, smelled them, and then they dumped them. He had already poured us fresh glasses. We were already happy, but they had to validate. Did you know Mark Brown as well?
Of course.
So Mark, and we're already at an hour. So, but
Okay.
This is a funny story.
All right.
They did a food and cocktail pairing, and Greg actually came to this. Greg Smith, I don't know, it was a few years ago, and there were maybe 25 people in the room, and Mark's telling a story about a cocktail, like you're talking about telling a story. He's making a cocktail, but you ended up with 5 full-size cocktails from a 5-course meal, which is a little heavy duty, right?
It's a lot.
But in the middle of it, and we had this conversation prior. He goes, I want to stop and talk to you about something. He goes, see that guy over there?
Wait a minute, Mark Brown said that.
Yeah.
Okay.
He goes, see that guy over there? And he points at me. He goes, I was serving him drinks in 1980 at the 3-2 Saloon at USC. I just want to introduce Paul K. I'm like, oh, crap. So he was working at SC at the 3-2 Saloon, which was on the 2nd floor, when I was there. And I remembered him. I remembered a couple of things about him that happened, but it was a little embarrassing.
He was a neighbor. I used to live up above Parkway, and I'd see him riding his bike down to Parkway. Great guy. I mean, I don't know why he left, but that's not.
I think he had a back or foot issue, and I was cleaning the house out not too long ago, a few weeks ago, and I found a handwritten note. He had been making the revolver, which is like a bourbon orange peel coffee thing, and I had written it down my writing. His cell phone was on there, and it said the revolver, and it had the proportions for this drink. And I took a picture of it and I texted it to him. I said, hey, do you remember this? And he wrote back, he goes, oh, thanks. He goes, you know, I'm still suffering a little bit, but if you ever have a job and you want somebody to pour a little bit, I can probably pull it off. And I'm like, cool, that'd be really fun. Because I liked talking to him. He was a good guy. Anyway, we're at an hour. And
All right. Well, thanks.
This is an amazing conversation.
Went by pretty quick.
We can go by. You and I could talk forever on all these subjects.
Well, as long as it's just opinions and not fact, I'm okay.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm sure we'll see you on the streets these days. Last time I saw you was at Parkway Grill having something. I mean,
join my podcast. It's simple. It's
love
that
to do it.
purple icon on your phone and just
type in the name. Just put in Peter Dills.
Yeah.
And the show is Dining with Peter Dills, and that is what day?
Sunday nights at 5 p.m. Sunday nights 5 p.m. AM 870. It's a Glendale station, but anywhere in LA you'll be able to pick it up.
Where is the
701? Well, I'm on Brand Street in Glendale. So we do.
Last time I saw you in the radio, it was down in La Brea or something.
I was down in Orange County. This has a little bit more oomph to it. Not that wasn't bad, but that was more of a sports crowd, and I'm trying
even
something
before
there.
that. You were at La Cienega.
The KBC. Yeah, it was KBC. Yeah, KBC, which is gone now too. So they come and they go.
Amazing. Hey, great to have you. Cheers.
Thank you, Paul.